Greetings, new friend. Allow me to introduce myself. I am Flavius Claudius Julianus, though history remembers me as Julian the Apostate. The story I share with you is one of immense highs and devastating lows, filled with moments of brilliance, bouts of paranoia, and, yes, even humor in the darkest of times. Born in AD 331 in the grand city of Constantinople, my tale is not just one of an emperor, but of a man caught in the tides of history, a seeker of truth, and an ardent lover of the Hellenic traditions. From my earliest days, life was anything but simple. I came into this world during a time of great upheaval, the youngest son of Julius Constantius and his second wife, Basilina. My father, Julius Constantius, was the half-brother of Constantine the Great, and my mother, Basilina, was a woman of noble spirit. Tragically, she passed away soon after giving birth to me, leaving me to navigate a perilous world without her guidance. My childhood was marred by bloodshed and political strife. In AD 337, when I was but 5 years old, my cousin Constantius II ascended to the throne in the east following the death of his father, Constantine the Great. The power struggles that ensued led to the brutal purge of my family. My father was murdered on the orders of Constantius II, and my elder brother was killed when I was just 10. These events cast a long shadow over my early years, instilling in me a deep-seated wariness and an unrelenting drive to seek understanding beyond the veil of mere existence. Despite the turbulence, my education became a sanctuary. I was raised in relative obscurity alongside my half-brother Gallus, first under the watchful eye of Eusebius, the Arian bishop of Nicomedia in Bithynia, and later on the remote estate of Macellum in Cappadocia. Eusebius was like a father figure to me, a tutor, and a man of culture. He would walk with me under the shade of the peristyle as we meandered through the garden, the finest in Bithynia. He introduced me to the great works of Homer, Plato, and the tragedians, igniting in me a fervent love for Hellenic culture. When I was 19, by the patronage of Eusebia, the wife of Constantius II, I was granted the opportunity to further my education in Greece. It was there, in the land of the philosophers, that I found my true calling. I immersed myself in the teachings of Neoplatonism, recently reformed by Iamblichus, and was initiated into the mystical practices of theurgy by Maximus of Ephesus. It was during this period that I began to see Christianity not as a guiding light but as the religion of those who had caused my family's downfall. This realization would later fuel my quest to restore the ancient religions of Rome. But the path ahead was fraught with challenges. Little did I know, the lessons I learned in those quiet gardens and bustling lecture halls would be put to the ultimate test as I navigated the treacherous waters of imperial politics. The stage was set for a dramatic rise to power, one that would see me don the mantle of Caesar and ultimately, emperor. Yet, the shadows of betrayal and the allure of ancient deities would lead me down a path that history would never forget. So, my friend, as we embark on this journey through my life, be prepared for tales of glory, despair, and a relentless pursuit of truth. The road ahead is winding and fraught with peril, but it is also illuminated by moments of profound insight and unyielding courage. Let us venture forth into the heart of the Roman Empire, where destiny awaits. As I grew, so too did the tensions within the empire. The turmoil that marked my childhood seemed to follow me, casting long shadows over my every step. It was clear that I was destined for a path that diverged sharply from the tranquility of scholarly pursuits. This part of my story begins with a reluctant journey that would see me transformed from a humble student to the ruler of the most powerful empire in the known world. In AD 351, my half-brother Gallus was elevated to the rank of Caesar by Constantius II. Gallus, though, was ill-prepared for the intricacies of power and soon found himself overwhelmed by the demands of governance. His reign was marked by cruelty and incompetence, leading to his execution in 354. This left Constantius II in dire need of a new Caesar from the house of Constantine. It was with great reluctance that he summoned me from Greece, where I was still immersed in my studies, wearing my student's gown, an emblem of my peaceful aspirations. The call to power was not one I could refuse. On November 6, 355, at the age of 23, I was proclaimed Caesar. The weight of the purple robes felt heavy on my shoulders, a constant reminder of the perilous responsibilities I now bore. My uncle, Constantius II, seeking to solidify my loyalty, married me to his sister, Helena. Though our union was not one of love, we shared a mutual respect and an understanding of the roles we were thrust into. Helena, however, would pass away 5 years later, leaving me once again in solitude. I was immediately dispatched to Gaul, a province plagued by invasions and instability. The Alemanni and the Franks were relentless in their assaults, and it fell to me to restore order. My initial trepidation gave way to determination as I led my troops into battle. Through a series of strategic victories, we repelled the invaders and secured the region. My successes on the battlefield earned me the admiration of my soldiers and the jealousy of Constantius II, who saw my growing influence as a threat. One of my most cherished memories from this period is the time spent with my mentor, Eusebius. Although he could not join me in Gaul, his teachings were ever present in my mind. I often found solace in the quiet moments before battle, recalling our walks through the gardens of Bithynia. His wisdom and the knowledge he imparted became my guiding light in the chaos of war. By 360, my accomplishments had become too significant to ignore. Wintering in Paris, I received a fateful demand from Constantius II to send a contingent of my best troops to the east. Ostensibly for service against the Persians, it was clear to all that this was a ploy to weaken my position. My soldiers, fiercely loyal and weary of the emperor's machinations, hailed me as Augustus. The die was cast, and the empire was now poised for a civil war. As tensions escalated, I prepared for the inevitable clash with Constantius. Yet, fate intervened. In November 361, as my forces were mobilizing, word came that Constantius II had died near Tarsus. On his deathbed, he had named me his successor, a move that brought a sudden and unexpected resolution to our conflict. I was now the sole ruler of the Roman Empire. With the mantle of Augustus firmly upon me, I returned to Constantinople. The city, once the backdrop of my childhood, now stood as the heart of my empire. I issued proclamations declaring my intention to rule as a philosopher king, in the tradition of Marcus Aurelius. My reign, however, was to be anything but serene. The shadows of my past loomed large, and the ancient gods I revered whispered their demands. In the next part of our journey, we will delve into my reign. You will witness my efforts to revive paganism, my struggles with the Christian establishment, and the battles that defined my rule. The path was fraught with challenges, but I was determined to leave my mark on history. So, stay with me, my friend, as we navigate the complexities of power, faith, and legacy. Upon assuming the throne, I was determined to breathe new life into the Roman Empire. My vision was clear, a return to the ancient traditions and gods that had once unified and strengthened Rome. My reign, however, would be marked by a relentless struggle against the rising tide of Christianity, a faith I perceived as the very bane of our civilization's glory. The court of Constantius had been extravagant, rife with the exotic degeneracies that I so despised. My first act as emperor was to simplify the palace life and cut down on its bloated expenses. I sought to emulate the Stoic philosopher Marcus Aurelius, governing with wisdom and restraint. Yet, I knew that such proclamations alone would not suffice to quell the discontent brewing among my subjects. In the early days of my rule, I endeavored to promote religious tolerance, allowing all exiled Christian bishops to return to their sees. This move, while outwardly magnanimous, was intended to foster discord among the Christians themselves. It was my hope that by allowing their schisms to surface, I could weaken their collective influence. However, this initial gesture of tolerance quickly gave way to a more aggressive agenda. I was determined to restore the ancient pagan rites and establish a hierarchy to rival that of the Christians. I saw myself as the high priest of this revived pagan religion. I performed elaborate animal sacrifices and issued doctrinal instructions to my pagan clergy, creating an official religion that mirrored the organizational structure of Christianity. It was an ambitious endeavor, but one that soon revealed the depth of resistance I would face. Despite my philosophical aspirations, I found myself increasingly drawn into the political machinations of the empire. One notable episode occurred in Ansh, where I was preparing for a campaign against the Persians. The city, predominantly Christian, bristled at my pagan restorations. The closing of the Great Basilica and the removal of the relics of the martyr Babylas from the sacred grove of Daphne incited outrage among the populace. Their mockery of my personal conduct and religious conviction stung deeply, leading me to pen Mesopotamia, or Beard Hater, a bitter critique of the Antiochenes' ridicule. But it was not just the Christians who opposed me. Even the pagans found my reforms excessive. My dedication to austerity and philosophical living did not endear me to the general populace, who longed for the more indulgent customs of my predecessors. The satirical pamphlets and public derision in Ansh were emblematic of the broader discontent simmering throughout the empire. Among my most ambitious projects was the attempt to rebuild the Jewish temple in Jerusalem. This was less an act of goodwill towards the Jews and more a calculated affront to the Christians. However, the endeavor was mysteriously thwarted when balls of fire reportedly erupted from the foundations, halting the reconstruction. Whether divine intervention or natural phenomenon, it only served to galvanize Christian opposition to my rule. Throughout my reign, my philosophical pursuits were interwoven with the harsh realities of governance. I wrote extensively, including a polemic titled Against the Galileans, in which I attacked the foundations of Christianity, dismissing it as a religion of the uneducated and gullible. Yet, my intellectual rigor did little to quell the growing unrest. Even my friend and chronicler, Ammianus Marcellinus, criticized my decree that barred Christians from teaching classical literature and philosophy, a decree born from my belief that only true pagans should impart the wisdom of our Hellenic heritage. Despite these internal struggles, my reign was not without its triumphs. Militarily, I continued to defend the empire's borders with vigor. My campaign against the Persians, however, would prove to be my undoing. Motivated by a desire to reassert Rome's dominance in the east, I led a grand army, the largest ever assembled against Persia, into Mesopotamia. Our advance was met with fierce resistance, and the sweltering desert heat took its toll on my troops. It was during this ill-fated campaign that my life reached its dramatic and tragic conclusion. In the midst of a chaotic retreat from the walls of Ctesiphon, I was struck by a spear. The weapon pierced my liver, and though my men fought valiantly to protect me, I succumbed to my wounds that very night. As I lay dying, my thoughts drifted to the gods I had so fervently served and the empire I had sought to transform. In the next part of our journey, we will explore the moments leading up to my death, the final confrontation with the specter of defeat, and the reflections that filled my last breaths. The legacy I left behind is a contentious one, but it is a story worth telling, filled with the passions and convictions of a man who dared to defy the currents of his time. Stay with me, friend, as we delve into the twilight of my life and the shadows it cast upon the annals of history. The final chapter of my life unfolded on the arid plains of Mesopotamia, far from the cities and halls of power where I had envisioned my rule would make its mark. It was a place where the harsh realities of war collided with the idealistic dreams of an emperor who sought to revive the past. The grand campaign against Persia, which I had hoped would cement my legacy as a triumphant restorer of Roman glory, became the stage for my ultimate downfall. Our march into Persian territory was an audacious endeavor. The vastness of the desert, with its unrelenting heat and treacherous terrain, tested the limits of our endurance. Despite these challenges, I was resolute, driven by a vision of conquest and a desire to reassert Roman dominance in the east. Our initial successes buoyed my spirits, but the journey was fraught with unforeseen perils. As we approached the city of Ctesiphon, the heart of the Persian Empire, my confidence began to waver. The Persians, aided by the unforgiving landscape, mounted a fierce resistance. Supplies dwindled, and morale among my troops started to erode. It was during this critical juncture that treachery and incompetence within our ranks further undermined our efforts. The dream of a swift victory turned into a desperate struggle for survival. On June 26, 363, amidst the chaos of a disorderly retreat, the fatal blow was struck. We were engaged in a skirmish with the Persian forces when a spear, thrown from an unknown hand, found its mark. It pierced my side, driving deep into my liver. The pain was excruciating, but in those agonizing moments, my thoughts were remarkably clear. I was acutely aware that this wound was mortal. As I lay on the ground, surrounded by the loyal soldiers who had followed me through thick and thin, I felt a profound sense of both resignation and defiance. My dreams of a restored pagan Rome, of a return to the ancient ways, were slipping away with each labored breath. Yet, I refused to succumb to despair. Even in the face of death, my spirit remained unbroken. In those final hours, my mind wandered to the gardens of Bithynia, where Eusebius and I had walked and talked of philosophy and the gods. I recalled the wisdom he had imparted and the strength I had drawn from his teachings. Despite the tumultuous path my life had taken, those moments of peace and learning had been my anchor. As the night wore on, I felt the life ebbing from my body. My vision blurred, and the voices around me grew distant. In a moment of clarity, I uttered my final words, Vicisti, Galilee, or, you have won, Galilean. It was a bitter acknowledgement of the triumph of Christianity over my efforts to revive the old gods. With that, I slipped into the abyss, leaving behind the empire I had tried so desperately to reshape. My death marked the end of an era, but it was also the beginning of a complex legacy. In the immediate aftermath, the empire was thrown into disarray. My successor, Jovian, quickly abandoned my policies and restored Christianity to its favored status. The temples I had rebuilt were once again neglected, and the pagan rites I had cherished fell into disuse. Yet, my impact was not entirely erased. Scholars and historians would debate my reign for centuries to come, viewing me variously as a misguided zealot, a tragic hero, or a visionary philosopher. My writings survived, offering glimpses into my thoughts and the fervor that had driven me. Even those who disagreed with my beliefs could not deny the passion with which I had pursued them. As we conclude this part of my story, I invite you to ponder the paradox of my life. I was an emperor who sought to turn back the clock, to revive a past that was slipping away. In my quest, I achieved much but ultimately succumbed to the inexorable tide of change. In the next and final chapter, we will explore the legacy I left behind, the echoes of my reign that still resonate through history. Stay with me, my friend, as we reflect on the enduring impact of a life lived with conviction and courage. As the sun set on my life, the dawn of my legacy began to rise, casting long shadows that would stretch across the centuries. My death, marked by those poignant final words Vicisti, Galilee, heralded the resurgence of Christianity, yet it also ignited an enduring debate about the path I had charted for the Roman Empire. I had sought to revive the ancient pagan traditions and restore the splendor of a bygone era, but in doing so, I left behind a legacy as complex and multifaceted as the gods I revered. In the immediate aftermath of my passing, my successor, Jovian, swiftly moved to undo many of my reforms. He restored Christianity to its preeminent status, dismantling the pagan structures I had painstakingly erected. The temples I had reopened were closed once more, and the rituals I had revived fell into obscurity. It seemed, at first glance, that my efforts had been in vain, a brief, fiery flash in the grand sweep of Roman history. Yet, my impact endured in more subtle, profound ways. Scholars and historians would come to view my reign as a poignant episode in the eternal struggle between tradition and change. To some, I was a tragic hero, a man of great intellect and passion who fought valiantly against the inevitable tides of history. To others, I was a misguided zealot, blinded by my nostalgia for a past that could not be resurrected. My writings, too, left an indelible mark. In works like Against the Galileans, I articulated a vision of the world rooted in Hellenic ideals, offering a robust critique of Christianity that would be studied and debated for centuries. My philosophical treatises, letters, and orations provided a window into the mind of a ruler who valued wisdom and sought to govern as a philosopher king. Even my detractors could not deny the intellectual vigor and literary talent that permeated my works. One of the most enduring aspects of my legacy was the very debate I sparked within the intellectual and religious communities of my time. My reign forced a reckoning, compelling the Roman world to confront the tensions between its pagan heritage and the rapidly ascendant Christian faith. This dialogue, fraught with conflict and introspection, would shape the contours of Western thought for generations. In the broader arc of history, my efforts to revive paganism underscored the resilience of cultural and religious traditions. While my specific vision did not prevail, the underlying ideals of philosophical inquiry, reverence for the past, and the pursuit of virtue continued to influence thinkers long after my death. The Renaissance, centuries later, would see a resurgence of interest in classical antiquity, echoing the very principles I had championed. Yet, my legacy is not without its darker shades. My policies, particularly those targeting Christians, were marked by intolerance and a heavy-handedness that belied my philosophical aspirations. The persecution of Christians, the prohibition against their teaching, and the exclusion from public life marred my reign with a legacy of division and conflict. It is a stark reminder that even the most well-intentioned rulers can falter, and that the pursuit of an ideal can sometimes lead to unintended consequences. In reflecting on my life and reign, I am reminded of the philosopher Heraclitus' words, "No man ever steps in the same river twice, for it is not the same river, and he is not the same man." My quest to restore the past was, in many ways, an attempt to step into a river that had already changed course. The world I sought to revive had evolved, and so too had its people. My legacy, therefore, is a testament to the enduring tension between the pull of tradition and the relentless march of progress. As we conclude our journey together, I leave you with this: my life, marked by passion, intellect, and an unwavering commitment to my beliefs, serves as a beacon for those who dare to dream against the tide. It is a story of conviction and courage, of triumphs and defeats, of a man who, despite his flaws, sought to shape the world according to his vision. Thank you for walking this path with me, for delving into the heart of a tumultuous and transformative time. The echoes of my reign may have faded, but the questions it raised continue to resonate. In your own life, may you find the wisdom to balance tradition with change, and the courage to pursue your convictions, whatever the cost. Farewell, my friend, and may the gods watch over your journey. As I conclude this recounting of my life and reign, let me draw a connection to a pursuit that bridges the ancient and modern worlds: the collection of ancient coins. Imagine holding a piece of history like this solidus of me, issued at Ravenna in 361, during my war with Constantius. The reverse reads, "Virtus exerc Gaul, virtue of the Gallic army, celebrating the legions from Gaul that acclaimed me as emperor." In your hands, such a coin is not just metal but a tangible link to the past, a symbol of the virtues and struggles of an era long gone. Learning history is not merely an academic exercise, it brings the world alive. Traveling to the places where history unfolded allows you to walk in the footsteps of those who came before us. From the streets of Constantinople to the ruins of Ctesiphon, these journeys breathe life into the stories of antiquity and offer profound insights into our shared heritage. Through this exploration, we come to understand not just the events but the people and cultures that shaped our world. I want to thank you for engaging with my story. Our channel, The Renaissance Spirit, is dedicated to the pursuits of a just, equitable, and humanitarian world. We cover a wide range of topics, including history, politics, religion, personal development, society, culture, social and environmental justice, and other liberal arts and sciences. Ancient Rome and the Roman Empire provide a rich tapestry for comparison and contrast with the modern world, perfect for the true modern polymath. The Renaissance ushered in a golden age of knowledge, rediscovering wisdom lost to time and paving the way for the Enlightenment and the Age of Reason. Embracing truth, knowledge, and an understanding and compassion for humanity and our shared history opens the world to us individually and collectively, helping us become better stewards of the earth and more empathetic towards each other. The Renaissance spirit is more than a philosophy or style, it is a way of living, learning, growing, and thinking. Please subscribe to our channel, turn on notifications, and share our content. If you're eager to explore and experience all that life has to offer, you'll find a treasure trove of knowledge and inspiration in our videos. I encourage you to peruse them and share your thoughts in the comments. Let us know what you gained from them and what other topics you'd like us to cover. But first, take the quiz next to see if you're a Renaissance spirit. Live the Renaissance spirit. Thank you, and may the wisdom of the past guide, but not dictate, your journey into the future.